Welcome. NSG 321 Study Section 6 Teenage Pregnancy. Introduction. This study section will discuss the concept of teenage pregnancy, defining as a teen as an individual between the ages of 13 and 19, and pregnancy as a physiological state between the periods of conception to birth, when a woman carries a developing fetus in her uterus. Impact and causes of teenage pregnancy will also be discussed. Finally, roles of community health nurses in teenage pregnancy will be emphasized. When you have studied this session, you should be able to define the following terms: a teen, pregnancy, teenage pregnancy, discuss the impact of teenage pregnancy, explain the causes of teenage pregnancy, examine roles of a community health nurse in teenage pregnancy. Definition of teenage pregnancy. Do you know what teenage pregnancy is? For us to discuss this, we need to ask ourselves who a teen is. A teen is an individual between the ages of 13 and 19, while pregnancy is a physiological state between the period of conception to birth, when a woman carries a developing fetus in her uterus. It can also be defined as a state of being pregnant. Teenage pregnancy is therefore defined as a teenage girl, usually within the ages of 13 to 19, becoming pregnant. This refers to girls who have not reached legal adulthood, which varies across the world, who become pregnant. Teenage pregnancy is pregnancy in human females under the age of 20 at the time that the pregnancy ends. A pregnancy can take place after the start of the puberty, before first menstrual period, but usually occurs after the onset of period. In well-nourished girls, menarche usually take place around the age of 12 or 13. Pregnant teenagers face many of the obstetrics issues as other women. There are, however, additional medical concerns for mothers aged below 15 years. For mothers aged 15 to 19, the risks are associated more with socio-economic factors than with the biological effects of age. Risk of low birth weight, premature labor, anemia, and pre-eclampsia are connected to the biological age itself, as it was observed in teen birth, even after controlling for other risk factors, such as utilization of antenatal care, etc. In developed countries, teenage pregnancies are often associated with social issues, including lower educational levels, higher rates of poverty, and other poorer life outcomes in children of teenage mothers. Teenage pregnancy in developed countries is usually outside of marriage and carries a social stigma in many communities and culture. By contrast, teenage parents in developing countries are often married, and their pregnancies welcomed by family and society. However, in these societies, early pregnancies may combine with malnutrition and poor healthcare to cause medical problems. Teenage pregnancies, however, in these societies, early pregnancy may combine with malnutrition and poor health care to cause medical problems. Teenage pregnancies appear to be preventable by comprehensive sex education and access to birth control method. Abstinence only sex education does not appear to be effective. Impact of teenage pregnancy. Several studies have examined the socio-economic, medical, and psychological impact of pregnancy and parenthood in teens. Life outcomes for teenage mothers and their children vary. Other factors, such as poverty or social support, may be more important than the age of the mother at the birth. Many solutions to counteract the more negative findings have been proposed. Teenage parents who can rely on family and community support, social services, and child care support are more likely to continue their education and get higher paying jobs as they progress with their education. Let us now look at some of the implications of teenage pregnancy on the mother, the child, other members of the family, and the community at large. On the mother, being a young mother in an industrialized country can affect one's education. Teen mothers are more likely to drop out of high school. However, recent studies have found that many of these mothers had already dropped out of school before becoming pregnant. But those in schools at the time of their pregnancy were as likely to graduate as their peers. Young motherhood in an industrialized country can affect employment and social class. Less than 1/3 of teenage mothers receive any form of child support, vastly increasing the likelihood of turning to the government for assistance. The correlation between earlier childbearing and failure to complete high school reduces career opportunities for many young women. One study found that in 1988, 60% of teenage mothers were impoverished at the time of giving birth. Additional research found that nearly 50% of all adolescent mothers sought social assistance within the first 5 years of their child's life. According to the National Campaign to Preventive Pregnancy, nearly 1 in 14 mothers will experience another pregnancy within 2 years of having their first. Pregnancy and giving birth significantly increases the chances that these mothers will become high school dropouts, and as many as have to go on welfare. Many teen parents do not have the intellectual or emotional maturity that is needed to provide for another life. Often, these pregnancies are hidden for months, resulting in a lack of adequate prenatal care and dangerous outcomes for the babies. Factors that determine which mothers are more likely to have a closely spaced repeat birth include marriage and education. The likelihood decreases with the level of education of the young woman or her parents and increases if she gets married. On the child, early motherhood can affect the psychosocial development of the infant. The children of teen mothers are more likely to be born prematurely with a low birth weight, predisposing them to many other lifelong conditions. Children of teen mothers are at higher risk of intellectual language and socio-emotional delays. Developmental disabilities and behavioral issues are increased in child born to teen mothers. One study suggested that adolescent mothers are less likely to stimulate their infants through affectionate behaviors such as touch, smiling, and verbal communication, or to be sensitive and accepting towards his or her needs. Another found that those who had more social support were less likely to show anger towards their children or to rely upon punishment. Poor academic performance in the children of teenage mothers has also been noted, with many of them being more likely than average to fail to graduate from secondary school, be held back a grade level, or score lower or standardized tests. Daughters born to adolescent parents are more likely to become teen mothers themselves. A son born to teenage mother is 3 times more likely to serve time in prison. Other family members. Teen pregnancy and motherhood can influence younger siblings. One study found that the younger sisters of teen mothers were less likely to emphasize the importance of education and employment and more likely to accept human sexual behavior. Parenting and marriage at younger ages Younger brothers too were found to be more tolerant of non-marital and early births, in addition to being more susceptible to high-risk behavior. If the younger sister of teenage parents babysits the children, they have an increased risk of getting pregnant themselves. Once an older daughter has a child, parents often become more accepting as time goes by. The probability of the younger sister having a teenage pregnancy went from 1 in 5 to 2 in 5 if the elder sister has had a baby as a teenager. On the community, teenage pregnancy affects the society in many ways, especially in the form of greater public expenses. Some examples of these expenses are foster care, social welfare programs, and health expenses. Pregnant teenagers do not have a life built up to support a baby, so they often need the help of those around them. This help comes in the form of informal community support, such as babysitting or hand-me-down baby essentials. Others include: 1. Contribute to the already high number of young kids having babies. 2. Decreases the chances of finishing secondary school and going on to the university. Thus, one more under-educated person not contributing to the advancement of the community. 3. Start or continue a cycle of young people having kids young, which is hard to break. Hence, a community with an increasing number of teenage mothers. 4. Forces young people to find jobs or forces the community to take care of their responsibility of the community, thereby reducing their per capita income. 5. The potential that the child won't have active parents in their life, which leads to behavioral problems later in life and in school, thereby increasing the number of hoodlums in the community. 6. Teenage pregnancies are considered as a high-risk pregnancy, which means they are more likely to have medical complications as they have not finished growing, thereby leading to an increase in the mortality rate of the community. Since we have discussed the implication of teenage pregnancy, let us now consider some of the causes of these pregnancies. Causes of teenage pregnancy. The cause of teenage pregnancy may be in different folds, some of which include early marriage. In some societies, early marriage and traditional gender roles are important factors in the rate of teenage pregnancy. For example, in some sub-Saharan African countries, early pregnancy is often seen as a blessing because it is a proof of the young woman's fertility. The average marriage age differs by country, and countries where teenage marriages are common experience higher level of teenage pregnancies. In the Indian subcontinent, early marriage and pregnancy is more common in traditional rural communities than cities. Lack of sex education. The lack of sex education on safe sex, whether it is from parents, school, or otherwise, is a cause of teenage pregnancy. Many teenagers are not taught about method of birth control and how to deal with peers who pressure them into having sex before they are ready. Many pregnant teenagers do not have any cognition of the central fact of sexuality. In societies where adolescent marriage is less common, such as many developed countries, young age at first intercourse and lack of use of contraceptive method or their inconsistent or incorrect use. The use of a method with a high failure rate is also a problem. Maybe factors in teen pregnancy. Most teenage pregnancies in the developed world appear to be unplanned. In an attempt to reverse the increasing number of teenage pregnancies, governments in many Western countries have instituted sex education programs, the main objective of which is to reduce such pregnancies and STDs. Countries with low level of teenagers giving birth accept sexual relationships among teenagers and provide comprehensive and balanced information about sexuality. It should be noted that there is a positive relationship between teenage pregnancy and alcohol or drugs. This will be the basis of our next discussion. Adolescent sexual behavior, alcohol and drugs. In most countries, most men experience sexual intercourse for the first time before their 20th birthdays. Men in Western developed countries have sex for the first time sooner than in undeveloped and culturally conservative countries such as Sub-Saharan Africa and much of Asia. The increased sexual activity among adolescents is manifested in increased teenage pregnancies and an increase in sexually transmitted diseases. Inhibition, reducing drugs and alcohol may possibly encourage unintended sexual activities. If so, it is unknown that if the drugs themselves directly influence teenagers to engage in riskier behavior, or whether teenagers who engage in drug use are more likely to engage in sex. Correlation does not imply causation. The drugs with the strongest evidence linking them to teenage pregnancy are alcohol, cannabis, ecstasy, and other substituted amphetamines. The drug with the least evidence to support a link to early pregnancy are opioids such as heroin, morphine, and oxycodone, of which a well-known effect is the significant reduction of libido. It appears that teenage opioid users have significantly reduced rates of conception compared to their non-using and alcohol, ecstasy, cannabis, and amphetamine-using peers. Lack of contraception. Adolescents may lack knowledge or access to conventional methods of preventing pregnancy, as they may be too embarrassed or frightened to seek such information. Contraception for teenagers presents a huge challenge for the clinician. In 1998, the government of the United Kingdom set a target to halve the under-18 pregnancy rate by 2010. The Teenage Pregnancy Strategy (TPS) was established to achieve this. The pregnancy rate in this group, although falling, rose slightly in 2007 to 4.1 per 1,000 women. Young women often think of contraception either as the pill or condoms and have little knowledge about other methods. They are heavily influenced by negative, second-hand stories about methods of contraception from their friends and the media. Prejudices are extremely difficult to overcome. Over-concern about side effects, for example weight gain and aching, often affect choice. Missing up to 3 pills a month is common, and in this age group, the figure is likely to be higher. Restarting after the pill-free week, having to hide pills, drug interactions, and difficulty getting repeat prescription can all lead to method failure. Some women gave 3 main reasons for not using contraceptives. Trouble obtaining birth control. The most frequent reason, lack of intention to have sex, and the misconception that they could not get pregnant. Among teens in the UK seeking an abortion, a study found that the rate of contraceptive use was roughly the same for teens as for older women. In other cases, contraception is used but proved to be inadequate. Inexperienced adolescents may use condoms incorrectly, forget to take oral contraceptives, or fail to use contraceptives they had previously chosen. Contraceptive failure rates are higher for teenagers, particularly poor ones, than for older users. Long-acting contraceptives such as intrauterine devices, subcutaneous contraceptive implants, and contraceptive injections such as Depo-Provera and combined injectable contraceptives, which prevent pregnancy for months or years at a time, are more effective in women who have trouble remembering to take pills or using barrier method consistently. According to the Encyclopedia of Women's Health, published in 2004, there has been an increased effort to provide contraception to adolescents via family planning services and school-based health, such as HIV prevention education. Age discrepancy in relationships. According to the Family Research Council, a conservative lobbying organization, studies in the US indicate that age discrepancy between the teenage girls and the men who impregnate them is an important contributing factor. Teenage girls in relationship with older boys, and in particular with adult men, are more likely to become pregnant than teenage girls in relationship with boys of their own age. They are also more likely to carry the baby to term rather than have an abortion. Sexual abuse. Studies from South Africa have found that 11 to 20% of pregnancies in teenagers are a direct result of rape, while about 60% of teenage mothers had unwanted sexual experiences preceding their pregnancy. Before age 15, a majority of forced intercourse experiences among females are reported to be non-voluntary. The Guttmacher Institute found that 60% of girls who had sex before age 15 were coerced by males who on average were 6 years their senior. 1 in 5 teenage fathers admitted to forcing girls to have sex with them. Multiple studies have indicated a strong link between early childhood sexual abuse and subsequent teenage pregnancy in industrialized countries. Up to 70% of women who gave birth in their teens were molested as young girls. By contrast, 25% of women who did not give birth as teens were molested. In most European countries, by contrast, once an adolescent has reached the age of consent, he or she can legally have sexual relations with adults because it is held that in general, although certain limitations may still apply, reaching the age of consent enables a juvenile to consent to sex with any partner who has also reached that age. Therefore, the definition of statutory rape is limited to sex with a person under the minimum age of consent. What constitutes statutory rape ultimately differs by jurisdiction. Socio-economic factors. Teenage pregnancy has been defined predominantly within the research field and among social agencies as a social problem. Poverty is associated with increased rate of teenage pregnancy. Economically, poor countries such as Niger and Bangladesh have far more teenage mothers compared with economically rich countries such as Switzerland and Japan. A young poverty-stricken girl clutches her child. There is little evidence to support the common belief that teenage mothers become pregnant to get benefits. Welfare and council housing. Most knew little about housing or financial aid before they got pregnant, and what they thought they knew often turned out to be wrong. Low self-esteem or desperation. Some teenagers, in their pursuit of being accepted by their peers and also due to their desperation, venture into activities that are detrimental to their health by getting involved in some illicit acts such as premarital sex, alcohol abuse, etc. Most times, they have the feeling that others are doing it, so they can also do it, and not doing it makes teenagers feel inferior to others. These kinds of teenagers most times lack the adequate knowledge about use of contraceptives. After all, he said, what is supposed to be the role of a community health nurse in teenage pregnancy? The next session will look at this. Role of the community health nurse. The role of the community health nurse is explained under the primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. Primary prevention. This aims at postponing first sexual intercourse. Its focus is to educate and empower teens. We can utilize primary prevention by 1. educating the teens on how risks and consequences of sex. 2. Empower teenagers to prevent pregnancy by making contraceptive and emergency contraception easily available. 3. Access to information is crucial for young people who want to prevent pregnancy. 4. Parental involvement in prevention programs may reduce teenage pregnancy. Parents, schools, religious institutions, agents of socialization also have an important role to play in the primary prevention of teenage pregnancy. Secondary prevention. This is at encouraging teens to use contraceptive consistently and to detect pregnancy early through pregnancy tests. It also involves providing service for early detection of teen pregnancy, early prenatal care, and support to prepare teens for becoming a parent. Tertiary prevention. This is to counsel teens about available options, including keeping the baby, adoption, and abortion. It also involves starting programs that prevent future unwanted pregnancies among teens and help parenting teens give the best care to their child. Strategies include parenting classes, services to help teens complete their education, where child care, nutrition and immunization services, and provision of social support groups to the teenage mother. What stands out is the fact that pregnancy is a choice for only a very few. For most sexually active teenagers, a lack of knowledge and communication skills ensures that the odds are stacked against them for the first time. However, national targets to